The students were really engaged and adopted the resources really early on. So on our fundamental skills module in biosciences, we put the key lab skills for each lab session on a week in advance. And we told the students that they should access them before the lab class. It wasn't compulsory, there was no mark associated with this, but we very strongly encouraged them to engage. And what we found was that the vast majority of students did. So over 90% of students were accessing those resources ahead of the lab class. And what was really gratifying actually was to then look and see how many of them went back to the resources after the lab class and had another go. So they'd prepared themselves, they knew what they were going to do, they got into the lab, they had a go with the equipment, and then they could go back and perhaps find out what hadn't worked, why it hadn't worked so well, and just refresh their memory. We asked the students for some feedback on how they'd used the resources and what they felt. And over 95% of the students said they felt that they were better prepared for lab work and that they felt more comfortable in the lab with access to these resources. Also, over 95% said they'd recommend them to a friend and that they wanted these access to these resources across all the modules that they were studying. So they clearly had a really positive impact on the student experience. And anecdotally, we heard that students were more engaged with the science and less worried about some of the procedural matters when it came to lab work in those early stages. We run a titration experiment, which typically takes up pretty much the whole 3-hour lab session, and there are people I'm normally shoveling out the door on the 3 hours. This year, I found the whole thing ran much more smoothly. We were out the lab quicker because students, instead of coming in and staring at the equipment and wondering how to use it and us having to go around and explain, how to good pipetting technique or use of a pipette, the students were much happier just to give it a go and get on with it. And the whole thing just ran quicker and more smoothly while we were in there. I really would recommend learning science to colleagues elsewhere, because we've been able to seamlessly embed these things very, very easily into our VLE. The students don't see them as an external resource, they see them as part of our course, which is fantastic. They've been really useful for supporting our students, but we've also used them on open days for admissions. We've used them to support technical staff in their CPD, and the support we've had from Learning Science in doing all this has been absolutely excellent.